Leonarda Cianciulli, notoriously dubbed the Soapmaker of Correggio, holds a chilling place in criminal history. Her tale weaves together personal tragedy, superstition, and grotesque creativity, illustrating the depths of human desperation and its capacity to drive one toward unimaginable actions. Our story begins with Amelia, a young woman living in Montello, Italy in the late 1800s. It was a time of strict conservatism. Italy was deeply rooted in Catholicism and tradition. Society imposed harsh judgments, particularly on women. The path was clearly laid out. Marry young, have children, and devote your life to family. This was the world Amelia knew. In the same town lived Mariano, a man of disturbing character. He sexually assaulted Amelia, and she became pregnant as a result. During the 1890s, an unmarried woman expecting a child faced immense pressure to marry the man involved to avoid social scandal. Bearing a child without a husband was considered a disgrace, bringing shame upon the woman and her family, often leading to their rejection. Around 1893 or 1894, Amelia gave birth to a daughter named Leonarda, though the exact year remains uncertain. Tragically, Amelia struggled to connect with her child, as Leonarda was a painful reminder of her trauma and the forced marriage to a man she loathed. Amelia's resentment was understandable but devastating for Leonarda, who faced neglect throughout her childhood. Growing up deprived of love and care, Leonarda longed for affection, which she never received. Her difficult upbringing, devoid of nurturing, contributed to emotional instability, and as a child, she attempted to unalive herself twice. As Leonarda entered her teenage years, Amelia pressured her to marry a wealthy man. For Amelia, financial security and elevating the family's social standing were top priorities. She believed that marrying rich was the only way for Leonarda to ensure a stable, worry-free life. The family was set on Leonarda marrying up to secure their future. Life at the time was far from ideal, rigid and likely monotonous. At 21, Leonarda fell in love with Raffaele, an older man who worked as a clerk. Unfortunately, he wasn't wealthy. When Leonarda's parents learned about the relationship, they were furious. Raffaele's modest income didn't fit their plans for her to marry into wealth. Despite their anger, Leonarda was determined to marry him, defying their expectations. This act of rebellion enraged Amelia, who went so far as to place a curse on Leonarda. At the time, witchcraft was taken seriously in Italy. Curses were common, and people believed deeply in their power. Amelia's curse was aimed at Leonarda's life, hopes, and dreams. But Leonarda wasn't deterred. In 1917, she married Raffaele Pansardi, despite her family's objections. For a time, Leonarda focused on building a loving home and becoming the kind of mother she never had. However, starting a family proved incredibly difficult. Over the years, Leonarda became pregnant 17 times, but tragically, only 4 of her children survived. She endured multiple miscarriages, stillbirths, and the heartbreaking loss of several babies shortly after birth. It's no surprise that Leonarda believed she was cursed. Desperate for guidance, she sought out a fortune teller. At the time, fortune tellers were quite popular in smaller parts of Italy, especially in regions where belief in the occult was widespread. During her visit, however, things took a dark turn. Instead of providing comfort, the fortune teller warned her that she would live to see all of her children die. Exactly the kind of news no one wants to hear. This prediction only deepened Leonarda's conviction that the curse was real, leaving her anxious and unsettled. Understandably so. Despite this disturbing revelation, Leonarda continued seeking answers, visiting other fortune tellers and palm readers in hopes of hearing something different. But things didn't improve. One palm reader ominously told her, "One hand shows you'll end up in prison, and the other shows you'll end up in a criminal asylum." It seemed like every time Leonarda searched for answers, the future looked even more bleak. Among her children, Leonarda had a clear favorite, her eldest son, Giuseppe. As if the curse wasn't enough, another tragedy struck. A devastating earthquake hit her town, killing over 1,000 people and destroying countless buildings, including Leonarda and her husband's home. Forced to relocate, they moved to Correggio. After settling into their new town, things quickly spiraled. Raffaele ended up in jail after being caught embezzling money from his job. His alcoholism had led him down a dark path, resulting in his dismissal, fraud charges, and eventual imprisonment. Leonarda then moved into a third-floor apartment near a canal, where she began selling herbs, baked goods, and soaps. Her products became popular with the locals, earning her a reputation in town. Alongside her soap-making skills, Leonarda was also known for her involvement in the occult, and many townspeople sought her out to predict their futures. By the late 1930s, Italy's political situation was deteriorating. Mussolini was rising to power, and World War II loomed, leading to food shortages and widespread poverty. Many residents of Leonarda's town were leaving in search of better opportunities and simply to find enough food to survive. Amid these challenging times, Leonarda was still haunted by the curse, and her worst fear came true when she learned that her beloved son, Giuseppe, was going to war. This news sent her into a downward spiral. After all, the fortune teller had predicted she would witness the death of her children. The prophecy that foretold her future involved either imprisonment or a mental asylum only fueled her anxiety. Despite her personal struggles, Leonarda was still seen as a respected figure in her community. While many people were uncertain about their future, Leonarda seemed to have answers. Over time, she even became involved in matchmaking, gaining a reputation for successfully pairing people up since she knew everyone in town. In 1939, one of Leonarda's friends, Faustina, approached her for help. Faustina, who came from humble beginnings, was uneducated and, most importantly, unmarried. As she neared her 50th birthday, Faustina didn't want to spend the rest of her life alone. Desperate, she offered Leonarda her life savings in exchange for being set up with someone. Understanding how much her friend longed for companionship, Leonarda agreed to help, for a fee, of course. She asked for 30,000 lire. Leonarda quickly found a match for Faustina, telling her that the man lived in another town, a convenient situation, as many people were leaving anyway. The man was described as wealthy, and Faustina was more than willing to relocate for him. Excited, she agreed to the plan. Before Faustina left, Leonarda requested that she write letters to her family and friends, explaining that she was living a happy and fulfilling life. Although the request seemed unusual, Leonarda reassured her, promising to mail the letters herself. Faustina, trusting her friend given the times and circumstances, didn't think much of it. On December 17, 1939, Faustina followed Leonarda's advice, leaving her letters behind and departing town, never to be heard from again. Rumors began circulating. Some thought she might have gotten lost, while others suspected something more sinister. Meanwhile, Leonarda became the focus of attention in the community. She was now not only the go-to person for matchmaking and fortune-telling, but also a job recruiter. Whatever people needed, Leonarda seemed to have a solution. The following year, a widowed woman named Francesca sought Leonarda's assistance. This time, she wasn't searching for love, but was desperate for a job. Francesca, who made a living caring for children, had seen her business decline due to the war. Once again, Leonarda stepped in, telling Francesca she had secured a perfect opportunity, headmistress of a prestigious boarding school in a nearby town. Overjoyed, Francesca thanked Leonarda profusely. However, Leonarda gave Francesca the same peculiar instructions she had given Faustina. She needed to provide some money, write letters to her family, avoid discussing her destination, and leave immediately after finishing the letters. Leonarda also convinced Francesca to leave her furniture behind, promising to sell it for her and send the proceeds by mail. Trusting Leonarda, Francesca complied. On September 5, 1940, she left her home, and like Faustina, was never heard from again. 2 women from the same town had disappeared after visiting the same house. Francesca's family, understandably concerned, visited Leonarda's home to ask if she had heard from her. It was completely unlike Francesca to vanish without staying in touch, and something felt off. But Leonarda reassured them that everything was fine, explaining that Francesca was likely busy with her new job. To ease their worries, Leonarda even gave them some of her homemade soaps before sending them on their way. A few months later, another person affected by the war knocked on Leonarda's door. This time, it was Virginia, a 53-year-old opera singer. And once again, Leonarda claimed to have the perfect job lined up, this time as a secretary for a theatrical producer in Florence. As usual, Leonarda asked for payment, requesting money and precious gems, which Virginia willingly provided. As before, Leonarda imposed her odd conditions. Virginia was told to keep quiet about the job and her departure, with Leonarda urging her to write letters and leave quickly to avoid missing out on the opportunity. So, on November 30th, 1940, Virginia followed Leonarda's instructions and left, never to be heard from again. But this time, things took a different turn. Virginia's disappearance didn't go unnoticed. An eyewitness had seen her last known whereabouts, and it wasn't at a theater in Florence. It was at Leonarda's front door. Virginia's family, alarmed by her absence, reported her missing to the police. They informed authorities that Virginia had last been seen at Leonarda's home. This raised suspicion, as it now appeared that all 3 women who had disappeared had visited Leonarda before vanishing. The police decided to interview Leonarda, though at first they didn't suspect her of any wrongdoing. To them, she was just an eccentric middle-aged woman known for her fortune-telling, soap-making, and herbal remedies. Nothing about her seemed particularly alarming. When officers arrived at her house, Leonarda was reportedly quite charming. She welcomed them in, offered coffee, and played the perfect hostess. She chatted about her ex-husband and expressed how much she adored her son, Giuseppe, who was away fighting in the war. Initially, the police even suspected Giuseppe might be involved in the disappearances, not Leonarda. Nothing about her behavior raised any red flags at the time. As with many wartime stories, some details remain unclear, but we do know that Leonarda eventually ended up at the police station for questioning. Some accounts suggest the police had questioned her son, which prompted Leonarda to rush to the station in a panic, while other sources say she went voluntarily. Regardless of how she got there, one thing is clear. When questioned about the missing women, Leonarda immediately confessed. There was no resistance or hesitation. She admitted to everything. In her mind, she believed she had acted for a justifiable reason. The 3 women weren't missing. They were dead. Leonarda had murdered them, believing she had a valid purpose for her actions. As the war raged on and her son Giuseppe was sent to the front lines, Leonarda became desperate to protect him. She remembered something she had read in an occult book. One pays for a life with another life. To Leonarda, this was the solution. She believed that to protect her children, she needed to sacrifice others, offering their lives in exchange for her children's survival. Tragically, Faustina was the first victim. On December 17, 1939, Faustina stopped by Leonarda's house to say goodbye before leaving town to meet her new love. With her bags packed and letters to her family ready, she was about to depart. However, Leonarda insisted she stay for a while to celebrate this new chapter in her life. She poured Faustina a glass of wine, and after a few sips, Faustina passed out. Leonarda had drugged her. What happened next was horrifying. Leonarda used a large axe to dismember Faustina's body. She baked her blood into a powder and mixed it with flour, sugar, butter, milk, and other ingredients to make tea cakes. It was said she even served these cakes to her friends and ate some herself. Most disturbingly, she sent some to her son Giuseppe to share with his fellow soldiers at war. Leonarda had convinced herself that if Giuseppe ate the human cake and survived, it meant her occult ritual had succeeded in protecting him. Giuseppe wrote back to thank her for the treats, which only reinforced her belief that the ritual had worked. Leonarda then recounted the murder of Francesca to investigators, a nearly identical story. Francesca, too, had stopped by Leonarda's house before leaving town, only to meet the same fate as Faustina. Virginia's death, however, took an even darker turn. After killing her, Leonarda added chemicals, perfume, and cologne to the mix and let it cool. She transformed Virginia's remains into soap bars. In 1940, Leonarda was arrested and imprisoned while awaiting trial. However, World War II delayed the court proceedings, and she spent 6 years in an Italian prison before finally standing trial in 1946. When the time came, Leonarda appeared calm. Leonarda Cianciulli was found guilty and sentenced to 30 years in prison and 3 years in a criminal asylum, her fate seemingly fulfilling the prophecy told by the fortune teller. Leonarda Cianciulli died in 1970 of cerebral apoplexy while still in the asylum. Her case remains one of Italy's most infamous, a grim reminder of the dangerous mix of superstition and personal despair. Artifacts from her crimes, including the axe and the boiling pot, are preserved at the Criminology Museum in Rome, serving as chilling tokens of her dark legacy. Her story raises unsettling questions. Was she a victim of a cursed life, or was she driven by pure evil? The legacy of the Soapmaker of Correggio endures, a haunting symbol of the extremes to which fear and obsession can drive a person. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know which case you want me to cover next. Remember to stay curious, stay safe, and stay skeptical.